Okay. Show me.
What's up, YouTubers? Duitsers in the house. Thank you very much for tuning in for my review of this here radio, the FlySky PL18 Paladin radio. A higher end radio from FlySky, and having said that, it's a bit of a break of the norm for FlySky, right? FlySky is known for budget radios. This is, it's not an expensive radio for what you get, but for FlySky I guess it's an expensive, well, I'm having a hard time calling this an expensive radio. Again, for what you get, it's not expensive, but it's still a lot of money. Okay, so in this video I'm gonna review this radio. I've had it for a couple of weeks, and since I don't like reviewing, especially things like this, after just a couple of days of use, I've by now had 30-40 flights with this radio or so. So it's time to review it, and in this video I'm gonna show you what you get with this radio. What the features are. I'm going to tell you what I think of this radio. Obviously, it's a review. And I'm going to tell you who I think this radio is for. So, is this radio for you? Or maybe for you there in the back? Yeah, now I'm going to tell you for what kind of pilot or maybe driver? No, mostly pilots this radio is for. And lastly, I'm going to tell you if I'm going to be using this radio as a primary, as a daily radio. And as you can see in the back over here, I've got choices. I've got a lot of radios, and all of these radios are pretty good radios for what they are. So it's not easy to pick a daily radio by now for me, regrettably, yeah. One of the chores of being a reviewer. Woohoo! Yeah, okay, so we'll get to that in a few minutes. Let's see what you get with this Paladin radio. So, when you order the Paladin PL18 from FlySky, you will receive it in this rather understated box, as most current FlySky radios come in black boxes. This is a sturdy box, but it also came in an extra outer box. So what I should state at this point is that it depends on where you actually buy the Paladin radio, what you will get. See, some retailers will sell the radio with one receiver, some will sell it with two receivers, some will sell it with a wireless charger, and some will not. Mine came from Banggood, and mine came with two receivers and a wireless charger. But check out the sales page before ordering. Maybe Banggood will sell it with one charger as well, or maybe without a wireless charger. Again, be mindful of what you are actually ordering. Some retailers will, well, sell different configurations. Okay, when you slide it open, you will quickly find out that it doesn't fit in your studio. Yeah, it almost fits in my studio. So this is also common for all FlySky radios of late. At least their higher end radios. A nice diagram of your new radio. Very, very nice. And underneath that you got the radio, with some stick protectors, foam stick protectors, excellent, and a screen and switch protector over here. I do, as you can see here, I have the wireless charger over there, some accessories, and after taking the radio out, I've got a few more accessories over here. So the radio is definitely well packaged. Again, it came in a sturdy box and an extra outer box, and as you can see it's all packaged in plastic. So yeah, DHL will really have to go to town to damage your radio, I guess. Okay, I'm gonna take everything out of the box and show you what you actually get. So, The radio comes with this charger, a wireless charger, and it's very unusual for a radio to come with a wireless charger, right? To be honest, I simply charge the radio via USB, which is also very convenient. I'd say that a wireless charger such as this would mostly be useful in a commercial setting. For instance, if the drone operators return to the office at the end of the day and then simply have to put their radios on the chargers and be done with it, right? So that they don't forget to charge them. Very convenient. And to that I should also add that I rarely actually charge the radio. Once in a week maybe. The screen doesn't use a whole lot of current. I think that's the main reason why I don't have to charge it often. I actually, and that's funny, I actually use this charger more for this action camera, which can also obviously be charged wirelessly, than the radio itself. You also get these two rubber alternate grips. So yeah, these, as you can hopefully see, are curved, whereas the stock grips are flat. And yeah, this might be more comfortable. I'll probably put those on. I haven't so far. I actually do like the radio to be flat and thin. But yeah, I might give this a try. And yeah, it's nice that you get alternate grips, of course. Now, if you thought that wireless charger was above and beyond, or maybe weird, there's more. The radio comes with two spare switches. But you could also see these as alternate. See, this is a 3-position switch and this is a 2-position switch. If for any reason you'd want to replace one of the switches in your radio, say one of the switches in the radio is a 3-position switch and you want that to be a 2-position or the other way around, you can simply swap those out. But again, you can also see those as spare switches. I don't think I've ever seen a radio come with spare switches. Also, L and S, these are long and short springs. And I guess the springs that are in the radio are medium length. So if you find the spring tension to be very loose or very hard, well, you can swap out these springs. And even with the medium ones that are already in the radio, you can adjust those. But yeah, if the adjustment range isn't big enough for you, you can swap out the springs with longer ones or shorter ones. Very, very nice. And you also get alternate stick ends. Now these are actually the stock ones, the ones that came on the radio, the black ones. And these are fine, but these aren't adjustable in length. And the ones I have on the radio now are adjustable in length. And you get a USB cable, and regrettably it's a micro USB cable, not a USB-C, which it should have been. But oh well, you can use this cable to charge the radio and to transfer firmware onto the radio. And at this moment there's no software to back up models, but there will be. So with this cable you can also back up and restore and maybe change models on your computer. Well, at least back up and restore models. And the last two things that came with my radio were two receivers. Again, your mileage may vary, and check out again the sales page from where you buy this radio. Mine came with two receivers, the FTR-10, which is, I guess, intended to be used in airplanes, a 10-channel receiver. It also has S-Bus, and I'll have a separate video on that receiver. I'll have a link up here to my video about that receiver. It also came with an FTR-10S receiver, which is a very small receiver, as you can see. It is meant for multi-rotors, drones. And both of these receivers are full range. And when I say full range, I mean kilometers, up to 4 kilometers, I'd say. Not at ground level, but if you fly your airplane or drone, say 50 meters up, you should be able to get a decent range up to 4 kilometers. At least that's what FlySky says. And finally, here is the star of the show, the FlySky Paladin PL18. First of all, hardware-wise, the body of this transmitter is mostly plastic, I think, but what you see here is a slab over here. This piece is aluminum, this piece here is aluminum, this piece here is aluminum, and the gimbals themselves are completely aluminum. So this faceplate is aluminum and the gimbal structure itself is aluminum. And yeah, again, the rest of the radio is made out of plastic. Over here we see two power buttons, and you do need to press them both to both power the radio on like so, or power the radio down. You can instantly hear that the radio has a speaker over here for the sound effects, but also for voice feedback, telemetry and such. Now, personally, I would have preferred a simple mechanical switch, but this is what radios are like these days, right? Yeah, so again, I very much prefer a simple mechanical switch. Oh well. Then we have 3 rotary dials, potentiometers, and these can be used for any channel or feature you'd want. All of them have an audible center. Very easily heard. The speaker is quite loud, and I don't even have it set to the highest level. But okay, so not a friction center. Not a friction center. Not a friction center. These are all identical, and I've already told FlySky that I think that at least one of them should be a 6-position switch for flight modes, for instance. There's no switch like that on the radio, and obviously you can set that up with a combination of switches and knobs and such if you'd want to, but I think at least one rotary dial with a 6-position encoding would be very useful. You tell me what you think, by the way. I'd be interested. Okay, then we've got all kinds of trim switches, as you can see, and those, well, in general they are used for trimming your sticks, but you can assign other features to them if you'd want to, and you've got over here as well assignable trim switches, more than enough. Regrettably, you can't do cross trimming yet. And if you don't know what cross trimming is, you'd use this trim for this stick, for instance. Very beneficial. I know that FlySky will have that feature in a future firmware, but okay, so at this moment it does not. Then you've got a lanyard hook, and the radio is very, very well balanced. As you can hopefully see, I've picked it up on this lanyard hook. The radio lifts up completely horizontally. It does not have a tendency to fall towards you, which would be awful. That's the last thing you'd want if you have your radio on a strip and have the radio fall towards you, and then, well, what would happen then is you'd accidentally go full throttle, right? So it's, again, you don't need a repositioning hook. This lanyard hook is at the right position. Then we have 2 sticks, as you can see, and again these are the alternate sticks, and this color is kind of a nod to FlySky radios of the past. Pretty much all FlySky radios have these purplish colored sticks, and this is a bit of a more serious radio, right? So this stick color, meh, but I think it's a nice nod to their heritage, so to speak. Then we've got this light bar over here. You can't change the sequence. You see here it rolls through all colors basically, as you can tell, and the major function of that is to let you know that the radio is still on. After a while the screen has now dimmed, and this is the only way for you to know that the radio is still on. And I kind of assume that FlySky will make that configurable. I don't really need that to cycle through colors or anything. Oh well. Maybe you could make that, set that up to show different colors and different flight modes. Oh well. Okay, then there's all kinds of switches and knobs, obviously. We've got over here 2 position switch, 3 position switch, 3 position switch, 3 position switch, 2 position switch, momentary switch. Then there's this 2 position switch, which will be a press in switch, so to speak, but basically it's a 2 position switch. There's an identical one over here. And like I mentioned before, there's well, trim switches over here. Then there's a slider switch on either side of the radio with an audible center. And you can access those sliders from the front and the back of the radio, as you can tell. Ideal. These work very, very nicely. The speaker level is again more than loud enough, even if you're outdoors. So, audible. And yeah, these simply work. They have exactly the right amount of friction, not too much, not too little. Then we've got this screen over here, which is a color touch screen. And in my radio it works flawlessly. I very much enjoy using the radio with this touch screen. There's one downside to this screen. It is almost unusable in direct sunlight. You do get this sun shield with the radio, which is plasticky. That's what it is. I actually kind of refuse to use it. I mean, this radio feels very well made. It feels industrial in quality, and then we've got this floppy plastic sun shield. The FlySky should really come up with something better than this. It does work, but floppy plastic sun shield. It has no place on this radio in my humble opinion. Then this is the rear of the radio with nice rubber grips, and these are the stock grips. As you can tell, these are completely flat, and the alternate grips have a curve to them. And my hands are pretty big, so probably those will be a little more comfortable to me, even though I'm never bothered by the shape of the radio. Okay, so you might have seen other videos on this radio in which this aluminum plate wasn't present. I think those reviewers had pre-production models, and in one of the reviews I saw, this module came out a little too easy. The reviewer was playing with this button. It's shielded by this plate now, but there's a button over here, and if you press it, this module comes out, and that's not really something you'd want, especially not during flight, because this module is actually the transmitter. Even though the antenna of the radio are in this part over here, this is the actual module, the transmitter. And it's replaceable. So yeah, FlySky added this aluminum plate to prevent you from accidentally ejecting the module. And my radio didn't come with an external module adapter. There is one available, basically the same one as for the Nirvana radio. You can see one of the screw holes over here for that external module. So for instance, the Crossfire module you can use in this radio, and it's natively supported. The FRSky module is not supported. Figure that. Yeah, okay. You also see these rubber thingies, and you can take those out to get to the adjustment screws. You can adjust the tension of the sticks without taking the radio apart via these holes over here. Finally, there are a couple more things on this radio at the top, and I hope it's visible for you. Over here we've got an expansion slot. Over here. Hope it's visible. And that's an expansion slot for a Bluetooth module. It is an optional module, and I assume that you'd be able to use that Bluetooth module for wireless training. So you can connect two of these radios wirelessly. We'll see how that works out once that module comes available. For as far as I know, it's not available yet. Then there's a likewise access hatch over here, and that has the USB port for simulator training or firmware updates or model backups. And this is a micro USB, and it should obviously have been a USB-C connector. I really don't know why this isn't a USB-C connector. And we've got a headphone jack, and that's probably for normal legacy trainer purposes. I might actually try that. Okay, even though this is not a how-to video, I want to show you a couple of things of the user interface. This is, in case you didn't realize that yet, this isn't OpenTX. It is, well, FlySky's self-made operating system for this radio. And that has pros and cons. If you are familiar with OpenTX, this is different. I am very familiar with OpenTX. To me, this user interface, this firmware, this software is easy to understand. I've set up, let's see, a couple of multi-rotors, simple ones and complex ones, and a couple of airplanes, also simple ones, and gliders with landing gears and flaps and such. It so far was all pretty simple, basically. Is there a learning curve to this firmware, this software? Yes, obviously. That goes for any operating system for any radio. And I think that for people that are new to this radio, or even maybe new to the hobby, this software is pretty easy to understand and far more intuitive than OpenTX. Does that mean that it's better than OpenTX? No, it's simply different. OpenTX is more flexible, this is more intuitive and easier to get into. Now, you have already seen all these pictograms, right, for features and setups. You can change the order of all these pictograms. So, yeah, you can have the most important ones show up first and then, well, the least important ones at the end. You can even, let me actually show you, in models you can say custom main menu. So the main menu, that collection of pictograms, depends on the model you're in. Which makes sense, right? You don't want a flaps function in your multi-rotor setup. Let me see, even exponential, for instance, you wouldn't want in a multi-rotor setup. Or ailerons, what? Flaps, spoilers. You want none of that in, but I have now looking at the setup of a glider. So in this custom main menu, I do want exponential, and as you can see, there are checkboxes. You can enable or disable all those pictograms for the main menu, and you can reorder them. As you can see, I've got the display servos as my first option, and if I want to move that down, I click, well, move down or move up, right? And that's the first feature I want in all my setups, so that I can check if all the sticks and all my switches have the right setup. Right? Now, I am still relatively new to this radio, but I had no trouble at all setting up flaps, as you can see on this slider on the right. And I've even gone as far as to mix in elevator. If you are into airplanes, you know what I mean. If you extend the flaps downwards, you want a bit of down elevator as well. But for my first flights, especially, I've set that mix up on a switch. This switch over here, 2-position switch, governs whether that mix is active or not. As you can hopefully see, the elevator doesn't move. If I change the flaps now, hope that's visible. However, if I engage that mix with this knob, like so, now the elevator moves when I change the flaps position. So that's, that was pretty easy to do. Can I show you how I did that? Yeah, again, it's not a how-to this video, but I've got one mix set up, one linear mix, I think. Yeah, it's this one, linear mix 1, from knob VRE, which is a slider on the right, to elevator. And it's now off, as you can hopefully see. It's a bit hard to see probably, it's red on black, but with the knob pressed inwards that mix is off. Now it's on. I hope that's visible. Pretty easy. Now I might do how-to videos on setup for airplanes, multi-rotors, etc. in this radio. To me it's pretty simple, but that might be because I'm familiar with a lot of radios. Could be. So again, I might do a couple of how-to videos on this firmware, on this software for the Paladin radio. Okay, what do I like and dislike about this FlySky Paladin radio? I like its form factor. I like the weight. It's not very heavy. For my liking, it could have been a little heavier, but it's a medium weight transmitter, I'd say. I think nobody will call this a heavy or light radio. So the feel of this radio, I've used the word industrial a couple of times. That's what this radio feels like, and it might even look like it as well, probably. It's a bit minimalistic, and it's not flashy at all. If you like the looks of this radio, it's completely personal, obviously. I like minimalism. So in that case, I guess I do like it. I mostly like it because it feels super duper sturdy. If you take this radio in your hand, you'll feel secure flying your expensive models with it. At least it won't make you feel insecure because of how it feels, if that makes any sense. Then there are the sticks. And before I go on, I should tell you that I wasn't given this radio for free by Banggood. There is a link in the description to the product page for this radio at Banggood, but I wasn't given it for free. I didn't even get a price reduction. So just so you know, if you think I'm being too positive about the radio, these sticks are the most precise sticks I've had in any radio so far. If you are familiar with the Nirvana radio from FlySky, you know that that radio has very precise sticks, gimbals. These ones are probably just a bit more precise still. If I hook up my quadcopter to Betaflight and look at the stick movements, the sticks are at least this stick and the yaw are always at exactly 1500. Not almost, they don't jitter at all, never. They are always at 1500. The range of each stick is always 1000 to 2000, unless you change the endpoints, of course. But the stock endpoints are always exactly 1000 to 2000 for every stick. Even if you apply as much pressure on the stick as you physically can, that value does not change at all. So yeah, I do have other radios with good gimbals, like for instance the FlySky Horus, also aluminum Hall effect gimbals, which are definitely precise, but not as precise as these gimbals. Now, if you follow my channel, then you probably know that I've recently built 3 identical freestyle quadcopters. 2 of them have the FlySky R900 system in them, receivers in them, R900MMs. And one of them now has the FTR16S receiver for this radio in it. And the range has been better with this radio, so better than the 900 megahertz system. I've even had dropouts. For instance, if I'm flying behind metal buildings with the R900 systems, whereas I didn't with this radio. So by now I trust this radio more than that R900 system for what it's worth. Okay, do I have complaints about this radio? Well, one of the things is there's no rotary dial with a 6 precision encoding. Again, for one of my video quadcopters, a self-built video quadcopter, I would very much want a 6 precision switch for my flight modes. The second thing is that screen. The touch screen interface works well, but as mentioned before, it's completely unusable outdoors in sunny conditions, and obviously that is a downside. Yeah, I hope they come up with a nicer and more robust sun shield for this radio. And a lot of people will say, why isn't this for instance an OLED screen, and why does this has bezels? I'm not sure, probably an OLED screen is a lot more expensive than this screen. That's probably the reason. Also, this screen doesn't consume a lot of power. I can easily use this radio, even though it doesn't have a replaceable battery, but I can easily use it for an entire flight day. And that's probably partially due to this screen not being too power hungry. Then there's one major downside to this radio at this point in time, and that's the availability of receivers. See, this radio uses a new protocol, which might be a downside for you in and of itself. But yeah, the receivers for this radio are at this point in time hard to find, and I'm sure that'll change in the future. But as this is now a newish radio, yeah, you can find receivers for it. But at this point in time only at AliExpress, I think. FlySky does tell me that they'll be available at Banggood at least. And I've told them they should make them available from Hobby King, which has regional warehouses. Hopefully that'll change in the near future. Also, there's only the two receivers I've shown you in the start of this video. The FTR10 and the FTR16. I would very much like, for instance, small little 4-channel receivers for gliders, which have limited space for your receiver, or park flyers, self-built, stretch-built park flyers. At this point in time you don't have a really small airplane receiver. Lastly, the radio didn't come with a lanyard, a neck strap. That's not a huge thing, of course. I have neck straps, but well, at this price it should have come with a neck strap, I think. It also didn't come with a protective pouch or a suitcase. I don't mean to say that the radio should have come with a suitcase, aluminum suitcase, or a pouch of any kind, but it should at least be available. People are generally proud of the radio they use. That's why we have fanboyism. So yeah, I definitely want a semi-hard case pouch for my FlySky Paladin radio. Now, I already alluded to that a minute ago. This radio is not backwards compatible at all, and the receivers for this radio aren't backwards compatible either. So this radio uses its new AFHCS3 protocol, which has significant benefits. So I definitely don't suspect FlySky from trying to lock out compatible receivers or modules and such with going to this new protocol. Again, that protocol has significant benefits over their old AFHCS2 protocol. But yeah, if you have a lot of receivers for your old FlySky radio, that's definitely a downside. I personally don't. I do have a couple of AFHCS2 receivers, but not a whole lot. So for me it's not really a problem. At this point in time, the biggest problem is the availability of the receivers for this radio in itself. And the last thing I'd like to mention in the pros and cons segment is the positioning of this screen. As you know, most radios have a screen over here below the gimbals. And yeah, there are a couple of other radios with the screen above the gimbals. And is this beneficial, good, or is it a downside? To me, this works out well. Especially if you use this radio for airplanes, in which you sometimes glare down at the screen for instance, the timers. You strain your neck less with the screen above the gimbals, especially if you use a lanyard, a neck strap. That neck strap would be in the way of you looking at the screen, you seeing the screen. So yeah, for me this works out well. I was actually quite interested in the original Horus from FlySky a couple of years ago. At that point in time I only flew Futaba radios. So yeah, I didn't want to make the switch. But now that I have a radio with the screen above the gimbals, I know what I've missed, so to speak. Also, in some older prototype radios, not from FlySky, but from, I'm not sure from which brand to be honest, but the screen actually ended up blocking your radio signal. With the antenna being somewhere over here and the screen over here. It's, well, there's obviously metal in the screen, I guess, and that ended up blocking the RF signal. And I really don't know how they solved that. Probably by raising the antenna higher up. But it's not an issue in this radio at all. Even when I'm flying dead behind myself. So with the screen potentially blocking the signal and myself, my body blocking the signal, I have good reception. So yeah, however they solved it, they solved that issue. Okay, then on to the hard part of this video. Who do I think this radio is for? This Paladin radio from FlySky. Now, obviously, FlySky tries to tell us that this radio is for everybody. And yeah, in theory, most RC pilots could use this radio, but would you want to? First of all, it's not a super duper cheap radio. Right? It costs a couple hundred euros, so it's not for the budget shopper. And also I wouldn't buy this radio as a first radio. You first want to see if you actually like this hobby, right? So maybe a second radio. But still, even then it's not a budget proposition, this radio. To that I should add, by the way, that how long do you use a radio for? Several years. So if you spread the cost of this radio out to, well, a monthly cost, it doesn't really matter all that much what your radio costs, right? You're only buying one. It's not like drones or airplanes. You don't buy a new radio every month. Well, most people don't, at least. Having said that, would this radio be a good option for people that only fly FPV drones or quadcopters? And I mean racing quadcopters or freestyle quadcopters. Well, obviously you can use this radio for such quadcopters, so sure, why not, if you'd really want to. But this radio has so many options, I'd struggle to justify that option. Now, you could argue, well, the radio has super duper precise gimbals and the lag is very low, lower than any radio I've used so far. Maybe the Futaba fastest systems come close or are equal. And I'm not comparing it to Crossfire simply because I don't have Crossfire. But as a bare radio without a module, so relying on the RF system that comes with the radio, very low latency, very precise gimbals, and so far, yeah, I'm not a long range pilot. But the link quality I've seen so far, it is better than at least the FlySky radios I've used. Now let's say you fly RC airplanes and quadcopters and basically you do all kinds of RC stuff with your radio, like me basically. I fly airplanes, I even fly helicopters and drones, quadcopters, and I sometimes drive RC boats, then this radio would be brilliant. Basically, it's got all the options you need, and yeah, it's super reliable so far. So for that kind of pilot or driver, I'd recommend this radio. Airplane pilots only, I'd say why not? It's a very dependable radio so far. And yeah, I can't see a reason why our airplane pilots wouldn't enjoy this radio. And the last category I'd see use this radio would be the professional RC user. So people that make ground surveys, or maybe you take photos of properties, or maybe you are in the movie industry. For those kinds of pilots, I can see them using this radio. With this radio you have well, it works well, that's one thing, but also if you show up at a job site with this radio, nobody will think, well, that's a toyish radio. They won't take you not seriously because of the gear you're using. I hope that makes any sense. And that's basically, yeah, the user groups. Again, if you only fly FPV racing drones, meh. Personally, I'd want a smaller radio with fewer knobs and switches. If you fly airplanes, then yes, great radio. Helicopters, probably as well. One thing I should add to that is that the radio isn't really useful for pinchers, in my humble opinion. Yeah, this radio is really designed for thumb flyers. So you should take that into account as well. Okay, this video has gone long enough as it is. Actually, it's too long already. Sorry about that. So let's try to wrap things up. Let me quickly tell you whether I will be using this radio and why. Actually, let me start by telling you why I ordered it. Part of the reason is that I'd very much like to step away from FlySky radios, or all their gear basically. And I don't want this channel or this video to turn out to be a political blah-de-blah. I really don't like that kind of drama. But you might be aware of FlySky using questionable business tactics, right? I do have a couple of FlySky radios now, as you might know. I have a Horus and an X-Lite. But again, I would very much like to step away from FlySky radios. And also, I wouldn't have ordered this radio, obviously, if I didn't think it was any good. Obviously, right? Otherwise I could have gone for a Futaba maybe, or a Spectrum radio, or whatever. But I do think this is a nice radio. Also, I'm interested to see if this radio is any good, because it's a step up for FlySky, right? So yeah, I definitely wanted to try this radio. Now that I have it, I know that it's a quality radio. At this point in time, I can't switch over all my airplanes to this radio yet, because at this point I have only one airplane receiver for this radio. Again, I hope that'll change in the near future. So I won't be switching to this radio 100% right away, but eventually I will try to at least fly all my airplanes with this radio. I have two quadcopters that I fly with this radio, and I'll just have to see. Again, I also have an X-Lite radio, the small FlySky radio, and I must say it's convenient to have a small radio, especially for drones. Oh well. So yeah, I do like the radio. It is quality built. Gimbals are second to none. The RF link is very reliable. So I'm definitely not punishing myself by making myself use this radio. Not at all. That's the gist of it. Now, if you are left with questions about this radio or anything else, don't hesitate to hit me up a comment down below. I'll be happy to help you. Catch you on the next video. Bye bye.